So this is 6 minutes to 21 hours GMT. So we are starting 6 minutes earlier than stated on the banner. This is Khoodeelaar television channel, Baby Angel Geronimo Editions, being broadcast from the east of London region in the UK within quotation marks on Saturday, the 30th of July 2022. Saturday, the 30th of July 2022. Now, what we have by way of contextual continuous updates include, of course, the events in India and in Pakistan. And we are focusing on the role of the court bureaucracies in India, as well as the Supreme Court in particular in Pakistan. And we shall restate a number of items that Imran Khan, the chairman of the Pakistan Tehreek Insaf party in Pakistan, has stated in his address on live television broadcast, as we have seen it by Qudrat television during Saturday, the 30th of July 2022, in which Imran Khan referred to the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he referred to Muhammad Iqbal and to Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And the main theme of Imran Khan's statement was that the crooks and the thieves and robbers and criminals that for 30 years have been dominating the state power in Pakistan must be removed permanently, and no similar crooks or gangs must be allowed to take up positions in the state of Pakistan's apparatus. And he paraphrased, of course, the Prophet's saying, Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying that if any society punishes the poorest, the weakest criminals and thieves, and allows the big criminals and powerful criminals and thieves to stay above the law, then that society is doomed to be sunk. And he referred also to Britain. Now, we don't agree with the full statement that Imran Khan has been making about Britain and British democracy. But this is in context a reference to Pakistan and the comparison with the Pakistani setup, comparison between the Pakistani setup and the British counterpart. Now, what he's saying is actually about the rule of law. And his emphasis, Imran Khan's emphasis, is actually motivated by the fact that while for 30 years the crooked families of the Sharifs and the Zardari have sucked the blood out of Pakistan's economy and Pakistan's society, in the case of Britain, somebody like Boris Johnson, being the incumbent in the post of Prime Minister, could not be expecting to get away with his breaking of the law. That is the COVID-19 rules that he broke by attending the parties. So what Imran Khan is saying is that in Britain, even the Prime Minister is not above the law, which is how it should be in the framework of the rule of law. So whether it's the COVID rules which Boris Johnson was fined for breaking or anything else. Every citizen, including the holder of the post of the highest post in the land, must be seen to be and treated as being equal with the ordinary person in the country and society, and that was happening according to Imran Khan in Britain. Of course, the details of that particular equality of treatment being meted out to Boris Johnson is, of course, very different in terms of the detail. But we do not want to confuse the two situations by getting into the details. So, for this purpose only, that is to avoid confusion, we're not going into the details of the dozens of allegations that Boris Johnson has evaded. But even if he has evaded the allegations, Boris Johnson is still being held to account. And I think essentially, even if it's one particular incident of fine, he's being fined by the London Metropolitan Police, it is still his being treated as equal in that he has not been completely exonerated. He has not been treated with impunity, that's say. He has not enjoyed or he has not been allowed impunity. That is what Imran Khan is saying about Boris Johnson getting fined. And the crooks in Pakistan, like the Shahbaz family, Sharif family, and the Zardari family, the Bimari family, they have not been fined or prosecuted. That is the difference. And that is essentially the difference that we actually recognize in the context of Pakistan and the events in Pakistan. And he also said a number of things. He said about, well, he said on Thursday about Muhammad Iqbal and Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Both of them were lawyers. He didn't talk about there being lawyers today, that is Saturday, the 30th of July 2022. What he said was that he ascribed to Muhammad Ali Jinnah the purpose of Pakistan being that it should be in accordance with Islam. And he said the same thing, similar words about Allama Muhammad Iqbal, who's often thought, well, mentioned as the dreamer of Pakistan. Now, about Iqbal, not like Jinnah, but Iqbal was the forerunner, the poet, the leading poet who led the theme of Tarana Milli. He wrote, चीन अरब हमारा हिंदुस्तान हमारा मुस्लिम है हम सारा जमीन हमारा. So this was treated as Iqbal being an Indian, that is pan-Indian, that is to say, it was a pre-August 1947 period. When the August 1947 happened, and today's Republic of India became India, and the Pakistan that Imran Khan is representing became Pakistan, the Tarana Milli was changed. And Iqbal was no longer being referred to by the Indian mainstream as the poet of India. He was, of course, he remains poet of India and he remains poet of Pakistan. And the power of the China Arab Hamara, Hindustan Hamara remains unaffected, undiminished, despite the fact that 75 years have elapsed since August 1947, when the two countries, Pakistan, today's Pakistan and today's Republic of India, became independent, quote, countries. So what Imran Khan said on Saturday in his televised address, which was shown to be being viewed in open air by thousands and thousands of people, supporters of Imran Khan and supporters and members of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. And they were very, very determined and solid and dedicated in their appearance, the body language, and the way they reacted to various statements that Imran Khan was making. So up to that, up to today, he was saying about the manifesto. What the matlab of Pakistan, that is the purpose of Pakistan, was, as Imran Khan paraphrased, was what La ilaha illallah, and the other is the Tera Mera Rishta Kya, La ilaha illallah. And he then joined Muhammad Iqbal to his paraphrasing of the Prophet of Islam and said that Allama Muhammad Iqbal wanted to have Pakistan follow the La ilaha illallah, the manifesto. Now, this is something, as we say, contextually, this is something that has not been said until this particular period, the last 3 months or so, since the foreign hukumat were being imposed and Imran Khan's legitimately installed government being removed. And there has been a significant change as a result of the mass mobilization that Imran Khan has made. In that the Supreme Court's constitution, that is the composition of the Pakistan Supreme Court, has changed, especially with the appointment of the Chief Justice, who is, as I said, appearing to be behaving almost like an independent judge. I'm not saying he is already doing fully behaving as an independent judge, but almost, because he took the step to oust from the post the Chief Minister of the Punjab province in Pakistan. Now, that would be unthinkable with the previous regime. And then also, Imran Khan elaborated on the demand that there should be a general election in Pakistan. And he then went into the technology of the election commission. He said that the election commission currently constituted election commission is corrupt, unfit for purpose. And he also went into discussing the technology that has been developed as people's voting was being counted in a more advanced way than has been the case so far. So he's saying that there has to be full adoption of the technological improvement in the voting behavior and the voting system, the voting procedures. And that, he said, Imran Khan said, would help reduce corruption, electoral corruption, psephological corruption, that is to say, corruption in the actual casting of the vote and the counting of the votes. To what extent that is implemented is, of course, remains to be seen, but that is what he was saying. And the people were on the kind of website that the Khoodeelaar television ran, we noticed almost 80 to 90% of the comments from the viewers was in favor of Imran Khan and the PTI and against the Sharif and Zardari, Bemari families and the corruption of those families. So those are the two things. And the other thing is, of course, in India, Smriti Irani. Smriti Irani is an Indian-born politician, but she is married to an Iranian. Iranian, that is the branch of the Iranian people who migrated to India, who are not Muslims, they are Zoroastrians, I think. And this one is Zubin Irani, she is married to. So the surname Irani may mislead people, but she is actually a child of a very deeply Hindu fundamentalist family. Generations of her family have been Hindu fundamentalists. Her grandfather was a Shiv Sena kind of leader, as was her father. And she was herself. She grew up under the Shiv Sena influence. So there is no question that Smriti Irani is anything other than a Hindutva fundamentalist. Now, she has applied to the Supreme Court of India. She has filed a defamation action against the particular members of the Congress party, the main opposition Congress party, who tweeted against her and her daughter. She is the mother of 3 children, but her 18-year-old daughter was defamed, Smriti Irani has said, and as was herself. And they've been exposed to threats of violence and they've been caused serious damage. That is what the preliminary finding based on Smriti Irani's application in defamation against the Congress party politicians has stated. And the actual fuller hearing is, I think, scheduled for August, sometime in August 2022. Now, the role of the Supreme Court here, it may sound like an ordinary person suing another ordinary person, but it's not. It's the BJP regime, fronted by Narendra Modi and Amit Shah, is using the Supreme Court as a weapon to intimidate and to deter the opposition Congress party. That is what it is about. But in Pakistan, that was the case already, because the ruling regime never got any convictions or anything, any ruling against itself following any application to the Supreme Court in Pakistan made by the opposition parties. So Imran Khan is saying that he wants a transparent Pakistan at every stage. The judiciary has to be independent, and there has to be rule of law to such an extent that things like what Boris Johnson in the UK is suffering should be meted out to the Pakistani counterpart in the similar comparable contextual behavior. So Imran Khan is saying that if democracy is not upheld in Pakistan in practice, and if true equality is not allowed to the ordinary people as the kind of treatment of the powerful and the rich and the crooks, then democracy will die and the country will sink. He was paraphrasing the Prophet of Islam. Of course, when the Prophet of Islam was alive and making his statements, there was no country called Pakistan, or indeed no country as we know it called India. Or the only country, the really significant, recognizable country as an entity at the time of the Prophet was a country called China. Not the way that China has become now, but a country called China. It was known even to the Prophet of Islam. And in the course of his answering the question about seeking knowledge, the Prophet said that you can seek knowledge and you can do so by traveling as far as China. Now, some of the people in the Communist Party of East Pakistan, or the Bangladesh Communist Party, deliberately misinterpreted that, because they wanted the endorsement of the Prophet of Islam to be abused as an endorsement of the Communist Party or Communist Party versions of Communist Party in India, in Pakistan, or in Bangladesh. It was the Prophet's reference to a faraway country, number one, that there was no limit to how far you can travel in search of knowledge. That was the first point. The second point was, irrespective of what system there was in place in China, because knowledge is given highest possible status in Islam, you could go and seek knowledge as far as China, regardless of what particular ideology that country had as the dominant ruling ideology at the given time. Now, of course, I mean, there would be no Islam in China at the time, because the Islam did not reach China until quite long after the Prophet had passed away. So the Chinese persecution of the Uyghurs, who are the Muslims. Now, Uyghurs in China, I mean, the Uyghurs are not the only persecuted group in China, but there are significant group of Muslims who are being treated to a genocide, cultural genocide, physical genocide, and so on by the Chinese regime. Now, the only reason why the Uyghurs in China are being shown any, quote, solidarity to by the West, America, the UK, and some other countries, is nothing whatsoever to do with these countries' kind of solidarity or sympathy or support for the Muslims or the Islamic cause, but because they can use the persecution by the Chinese of the Uyghur Muslims overall as an example of China's lack of democracy, repressive culture, its violation of people's religious beliefs, and its violation and oppression of the Muslim people. That is the reason. That is a completely different reason than the reason that is given by some of these promoters, like Liz Truss, who is one of the two remaining candidates for the office of the post of office or post of the leader of the Conservative Party in the UK. She is as superficial about showing any sympathy or solidarity for the people in the Uyghur region in China. She's only doing that in order to to that extent raise her profile, so that she is seen as being tough and as being unafraid to question the Chinese. That is to show that she is fit for the office of Prime Minister. I mean, how this contest that remains will end is not possible to predict precisely. But there are only two candidates, and both Rishi Sunak and Elizabeth Truss are kind of individuals with character flaws in their characters. Whereas Sunak has been already identified as being part of the very rich people, and has been exposed as not having paid the tax, and also having been exposed as having offshore accounts. Lizzie or Liz Truss has been shown as being unfit in other ways. And so, therefore, it's not possible to actually see the difference between the two of them morally and ethically. But despite the fact that they have got so many immoralities in common, only one of them will be announced as leader of the Conservative Party on the 5th of September, just over nearly 5 weeks from now. So when in office, Liz Truss will face a tougher battle if she gets in than she thinks or her backers think so far. For example, in Leeds, she went to secondary school, and Leeds school that has been doing very well has been condemned and criticized by Liz Truss as letting down the people there. And this has been kind of focused on in a piece in The Guardian running in the last 48 hours, showing that she hasn't got the capacity. Liz Truss hasn't got the capacity to actually lead. So this will be something that is inevitable to happen, and it is absolutely something that will hamper I don't know whether we've got a correspondent trying to enter the studio. The correspondent, if they succeed, will be called Kutubuddin. And they'll be trying to enter the studio as a guest from a location in Bangladesh. If they can, and we shall see him. And if they can't, then we shall be continuing to try to get him into the studio in subsequent editions of this program. Now, there are so many things wrong with the post of mayor, elected mayor in the England, in the councils in England. One of the most recent additions to the list of councils that have been lumbered with the executive mayor is, of course, Bristol City Council, which is kind of slightly smaller than the Greater Manchester, where Andy Burnham has been incumbent as the mayor of Greater Manchester. In the case of Bristol City Council, I think it is Marvin Rees. Now, Marvin Rees is a man of the African background, but essentially, because he is an executive mayor, elected mayor in the name of the people of Bristol, he has been able to abuse the position, just like Lutfur Rahman has abused his position when he was and has been in post in the period in the periods concerned since he got in late October 2010, and he has now got in again on the 5th of May 2022. As I said, on the 15th of February 2011, I witnessed the kind of incurring for the people of Tower Hamlets Borough of a huge taxi bill by Lutfur Rahman, who kept a taxi on meter waiting in Brick Lane while Lutfur attended one of the do's that had been organized to say thank you to him for his alleged support or commitment prior to the October 2010 mayoral election. I think on the 15th of February 2011, Lutfur Rahman visited that area, that organization based at 164 Brick Lane, London E15 6RU, to show them that he was committed to have supporting them. The organization that Lutfur Rahman visited on that day, 15th of February 2011, was an organization called HEBA Women's Group, HEBA. We shall talk about HEBA, which was effectively founded and established by K. Jordan. K. Jordan is the second person with me who created the Khoodeelaar campaign in December 2003. So, what Lutfur Rahman was doing by letting the taxi on meter wait for him was to show contempt for the money that belonged to the people of Tower Hamlets. The meeting that he had with the HEBA, whatever the quality of that meeting, could not justify Lutfur Rahman spending as much as he did spend, almost an hour or just about an hour. And the taxi ran the meter. Whatever the amount, it would have been quite significantly higher than it would be if Lutfur Rahman had not had this taxi on meter and waiting for as long as he did. Extrapolate that kind of irresponsible behavior, and you can see that Lutfur Rahman literally abused hundreds of millions of pounds and misused and concealed hundreds of millions of pounds that belonged to the people of Tower Hamlets while he was actually in post from late October 2010 until the election of May 2014, and then again in post from that election onwards until he was kicked out from that post by Richard Morey, the election commissioner, on the 23rd of April 2015. Because in those years that Luther Rahman was in place as the incumbent in the post of mayor at the expense of Tower Hamlets, many people suffered losses. Many people are caused losses directly caused by negligence, by the dishonesty and the criminality on the part of various decision makers in place, in posts, and in Tower Hamlets. So all the comments that we have made so far against the kind of racist white left, so-called, in this country, that have suddenly come on the surface to, quote, celebrate the return of Lutfur Rahman, as they call it, to the post of the ultimate power holder in Tower Hamlets. Those criminals that have been praising Lutfur Rahman's return are no less than criminals. And they have no respect for the people of the Borough. They have no respect for the voters of Tower Hamlets when these criminals knowingly pretend that Lutfur Rahman was absolutely innocent and that Richard Morey had ousted Lutfur Rahman without any sufficient evidence. Now that is a lie. We shall be talking more about Lutfur Rahman and the solid foundations of evidence on which Richard Morey acted and ruled on the 23rd of April 2015 that Lutfur Rahman was unfit. Now, along with Lutfur Rahman, the only other person that was actually ousted from the elected post was the elected councillor, Alibor Chowdhury. The other person that was in the original list of kind of defendants, the list drawn up by the petitioners, formal petitioners, against the fraudulent election of May 2014 that Lutfur Rahman got re-elected in. These are the people that actually have one way or the other been featuring in the corruption and the abuse and the misuse and the waste of resources that Lutfur Rahman has perpetrated during the years. And contrary to the myth created by the Conservative Home website and the London Evening Standards, Peter Golds, the Conservative councillor on the London Borough of Tower Hamlets, is not only a real campaigner for justice, but is an opportunist. He's narrow-minded, he's very ignorant, very undiplomatic, even in formal settings. For example, because of the brainwashing by the likes of the ethnicity-linked outlets that operate in the name of at the expense of the Bangladeshis in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets, these brainwashed ones actually show exceedingly, inordinately high level of deference to their racist colleagues and contemporaries. And so it has been witnessed over the last 4 years or so that Peter Golds has had very surprising, unlikely sources of fans. One of these sources used to be collected at in in Wapping, which is within the Shadwell and Limehouse and Poplar parliamentary constituency. The evidence that is actually available about Luther Roman's corrupt behavior has never been published either by the Lab Wapping or by Ted Jury, who has been more kind of regular in terms of posting things about Luther Roman. Ted Jury is no longer doing the tweets that he did before because Ted Jury has moved on in a way in terms of his career. So he's not focusing on Tower Hamlets as such on a daily basis. But before Luther Roman was ousted on the 23rd of April 2015, Ted Jury was very much part of the quote Fleet Street gang. And he was seen as communicating with them and vice versa. Now, Ted Jury has posted things about Luther Roman being, and he has done that by accurately citing various items. But Ted Jury has not done enough investigation and has not published enough evidential, credible demands that would stick and would force those who are in power, in post to actually prosecute Luther Roman. Would have no excuse if such information were published by Ted Jury. And the other thing is that Ted Jury's main sources were those three petitioners. Not Debbie Simon, she stayed away really from any collective co-appearance with the other three. So the actual people that Ted Jury would have consulted would have been so what Ted Jury did was to kind of stop posting effectively as soon as Richard Morey ruled on the 23rd of April 2015. So Ted Jury is inactive, and the racist creep, Mark Baines, is ignorant and not fit for purpose because he doesn't understand constitutionality. He doesn't understand democracy as in action. And he hardly cares about the actual identifiable incidents of criminality done by Luther Roman as well as by his cabal. Whatever the posts he held, he gave to the cabal. That was the case. And Alibar Chaudhry is described by Mark Baines in the last fortnight or so that Alibar Chaudhry is back as controlling the Tar Hamlets Council. Now we have searched for that kind of combination of that assertion, and we cannot find that any independently published or any published items about Alibar Chaudhry in Tar Hamlets has described him as the controller of Tar Hamlets. But we don't rule out the fact that it is possible that he was seen as and used as the controller of Tar Hamlets by Luther Roman, who offloaded stuff onto Alibar Chaudhry that he could not himself tackle. Shall come to the actual details shortly. Because Lutfur Rahman gave Alibor Chaudhry some of the dirtiest work to do on his behalf. And one of the things that Alibor Chaudhry did was to mount a serial kind of harassment of Peter Gould. And in that serial act of harassment, Alibor Chaudhry was aided and abetted by the woman called Freeman. Freeman was the head of the legal section in Tower Hamlets and also the monitoring officer. So bad was Freeman's behavior and role in hiding and covering up Lutfur Rahman, covering up for Lutfur Rahman, that the conservative MP and formerly in practice licensed law trader called Neil moved a motion under the banner of the Ansar. Let's say that this was a statement. This was a statement he made in English. But I think that because we are looking at the Indian websites, we are expecting the websites to actually publish the translation of their original attack piece. But there has been no such publication so far. And it has been years since Alibor Chaudhry was ousted by Lee Mori. And the reason why the racist creep Mark Baines refers to Alibor Chaudhry is because of the little news statement published by the Tower Hamlets Council's website, in which Alibor Chaudhry is described as the second head of the mayor's office after the woman whose name is eluding me, but we'll come back to the name in a subsequent kind of post. Alibor Chaudhry was described by the judge Richard Morey scathingly, as was Lutfur Rahman described scathingly by the same judge. And the judge ruled against Lutfur Rahman on the judge actually condemned both Lutfur Rahman and Alibor Chaudhry in the fiercest possible terms, whereas he praised John S. Williams in the most embarrassingly ignorant and most embarrassingly racistly patronizing way. Now, we don't have any transcript in front of us, but essentially what the criticism of Alibor Chaudhry read like was that he was This is 21 hours 39 minutes GMT, that is 22:39 hours London UK time. And this is Khoodeelaar television channel streaming online on the internet only. This is not available on the YouTube or Facebook platforms that we are broadcasting to as well. And the statement that the Mori made against Alibar Chaudhry should have been followed up, but those were not followed up. Who should have followed them up? Of course, the people who had actually successfully submitted the petition against Lutfur Rahman, because it was part of the ruling on the petition against Lutfur Rahman that the Lutfur Rahman kind of supporting, or Lutfur Rahman engaged entourage featuring featuring Alibar Chaudhry occurred. I should stop that particular connection and move the conversation to the day when the ruling was appointed, was actually delivered and was scheduled to be delivered. And when this came to the delivery of the statement of the broadcast, it looked like the broadcast of an established building or authority or organization. And once I have read the actual relevant bits and refreshed myself about the bits that I've since been talking about without looking at the actual transcript of the content, still convinced me that Lutfur Rahman was totally condemned as a crook and a liar and a fraudster, as was Alibar Chaudhry. Additionally, Alibar Chaudhry had his own kind of ambition. So we shall be bringing an end to this particular edition at just under 50 minutes, and we shall continue on the theme in due course next time.